Hey, YouTube. Sorry, I think I have a foggy camera here. There, much better. Let's do it. It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on a Tuesday evening, getting ready for the earliest homecoming that I can remember, and one in which vibes are pretty darn high. So Illinois is 2-0. They have a win against a ranked opponent in what was a thrilling night, as we talked about Sunday morning on the last podcast. I mean, the Kansas win, if we were to contextualize it in terms of big Illini home victories in the modern era, there's not many of those games that went our way, and this one did. So I'll be quite honest with you. The last few days, I've just been glowing. Wore an Illini shirt yesterday, wore my Bears shirt today. What the heck? I mean, it was a weird game Sunday, but they won. My teams won. The Packers lost. Notre Dame, which, whatever, I don't really care about them too much, but they lost. Northwestern lost. Michigan lost. You go down the list, Iowa lost at home to Iowa State. So we're just cruising right now, man. Everything is great. And I know that it is early in the season, but this is one other thing that separates this start of the season from previous ones, even under Bielema, who's had a much better tenure than any Illini coach in my history as a fan. Here we are on September 10th, and the vibes are already great. And we can't say the same for 2 years ago when I think on September 6th or 7th, it was early in the season, they lost at Indiana on a Friday night. And they went on to rattle off, 6 straight wins to a 7-1 start after that, which no one probably anticipated after the Indiana game. And yet they did it. But it didn't feel great at this time 2 years ago. Certainly didn't feel great this time last year or Bielema's first year, where game 2, after you beat Nebraska at home, was a loss to UTSA at home. Go figure. So it is a unique position to be in. And it would be the first time Illinois has gone 3-0 if they get the win against Central Michigan. The first time since 2011. A team that should not have finished 6-6, especially after starting 6-0, but that's what they did. I don't anticipate the same issue for this team because it seems like the toughest part of the schedule is smack dab in the middle, and it does lighten up towards the end. Same cannot be said for that 2011 team. But think about this. 2007, the Rose Bowl year. They didn't start 3-0. They started 0-1. They lost to Missouri. 2001, they started 3-0 before getting smoked at Michigan. And who knows, maybe the same thing happens when Illinois goes to Nebraska. But all in all, it's a good place to be in as a fan. It's kind of cool, I think, that we're having an early homecoming. And to me, it's doubling up the homecoming goodness because the Michigan game in October is homecoming in all but name. That's going to be a huge crowd. It's mid-October. You got the Red Grange uniforms, 100th anniversary of the stadium. Big celebration for that. That is essentially the real homecoming. But this one is still going to bring people down. We got a big tailgate set up and all of that. Now, I want to start with an anecdote before I get to the sponsors and the meat of today's podcast, including a question I asked the listeners on Twitter, which was, after the Kansas win, how have your expectations changed, short-term, long-term? And got a few good answers that we're going to go over. And if you're in the chat window, and I know we just got a few tonight on what is debate night in America. Debate night. So I'm going to be out of here in case you want to go watch that. But got a lot of good responses. We'll take yours in the chat window. And I will say that while my expectations have not changed dramatically, there is something somewhat unencumbering about getting a big early win. And now being able to say, okay, well, now let's just see what happens. There's less of an onus, less pressure on subsequent games, however you say it, because you got a big win early. And you build in a little bit more margin for error. You have some good vibes as a fan that you wouldn't normally have this time of year. Here's an anecdote, though. So today, I had the privilege of speaking at a University of Illinois journalism class. I got to thank Vince for having me come in and speak to his class. He is teaching his students, about 40 of them, the great sports journalism work. So to give you an example, this week they are reading Hunter S. Thompson's just absolutely legendary piece about the Kentucky Derby. The Decadence and Depravity at the Kentucky Derby, I think is the name of it. If you haven't read it, please do. It is just gonzo journalism at its finest. It's free on the internet. Hunter S. Thompson at his best. So by no means am I saying that, oh, look, I wrote a book about Illini basketball, and therefore this is the next great sports journalism work. Not by any stretch. But he was nice enough to have me come in and talk about my career, a little bit about the book and stuff. And there are 2 football players in that class. And they came up afterwards, and we chatted a little bit, and one of them asked, hey, what'd you think about the game Saturday? I was like, dude, pure joy. I'm a fan, have been for a long time. Those don't normally happen like that. Pure joy. And I asked him back, I said, how's the vibe around the team right now? And he said something to the effect of this. Well, when we got to practice on Sunday, or when we got to film session, by the way Coach B talked, you would not have known that we won Saturday. And I thought, ooh, I like that. Okay, so as a fan, that's just chum in the water. Okay, Coach was not going to let them come in and celebrate too long. I'm sure the guys had a hell of a Saturday night, as they should. They should have been feeling a little worse for wear on Sunday. That's how big that win was. They had carte blanche to go have a good damn time. But Sunday, to hear that they get back into film session, and Biela was not having any of it. And it's like, okay, go through the film. Here's what was wrong. They didn't give me specifics about that, nor did I ask. But to me, there's something kind of reassuring about that the team gets there on Sunday and back to work in what is a proverbial trap game coming up Saturday against Central Michigan, who, yeah, they struggle mightily at Florida International. From what I understand, the box score shows they gained plenty of yards, but they turned the ball over 6 times against Florida International. So let's say they don't turn it over 6 times. Maybe they have the ability to move the ball. Maybe they don't stink completely. And we've seen times before, whether it be Eastern Michigan in 2019 or, well, were there any others in there? Louisiana Tech 2012. I'm trying to think of mid-majors that have come in here and beat Illinois in football. It has happened. Not as much as you would think, actually, given our history. But to hear that, it's okay, this team is focused. They're ready to go. The coaches know that there's some positives, but boy, this team is still a work in progress. And it's not all that dissimilar from watching the Bears Sunday. They got the win. It was a big win. I mean, it was Caleb Williams' first start. The start of the season, you're down 17-0, and you won the game. That's impressive. Even if it meant the other team really sucked their way to that loss, you contributed to it, much in the same way that Illinois contributed to Kansas kind of stinking on Saturday. Uncharacteristically so. Illinois had something to do with that. But it does appear from that anecdote like they are focused and they're ready, and they understand that, you know, if they want to achieve something more than just a good season, boys, that they're going to have to tighten some things up. I think the talent's there. I think there is potential there for an 8-win season. I do. But that would require taking care of business Saturday, of course, and probably winning one of the 2 road games coming up. I think it's possible. I'm certainly going to tune in against Nebraska and Penn State and say, what the heck? Let's just see what happens. And I hope that after a clean win against Central Michigan, if that's in fact what happens, that I can watch Nebraska or watch Penn State feeling a little less pressure and just saying, okay, let's learn something about the team. They are not going to go undefeated. They're not probably going to make the college football playoff. That's okay. But what can we glean from the first month of the season? But so far, the returns are good, not perfect. There are things to work on, but the overall tenor of the season is already drastically different thanks to that Kansas win. Speaking of Kansas, one more anecdote before we get to sponsors. So I had asked the players, because as I'm talking to them, I realized, wait, you know, I'm behind the Illini sideline about 30 rows up. And I asked these 2 players question. Did you happen to hear any Kansas fans, let's say row 10, and I didn't even get any further in that sentence before Patrick, who was one of the guys I was talking to, had said, oh, yeah, like 3 or 4 of them, and the cops came down and talked to him. I was like, yes. I was like, at about the north 40-yard line. He said, mm-hmm. And he actually had a personal story of them yelling at him over and over and over, saying his name, getting him to turn around. And I just thought, oh my God. So between the tweet that Ethan sent me on Sunday during the podcast, that Illini board, or I'm sorry, the boardroom had put out of these Kansas Bros, they in fact were complete D-bags to everybody. So I don't feel quite as bad for dropping the F-bomb once, twice, thrice, however many times I did in their general direction. In fact, they deserved it. They're kids. They'll learn from it. They'll get better. But then again, I am the 37-year-old. I could probably stand to be a little bit more mature. I don't anticipate that Central Michigan is going to have the same sort of bro fans coming in and Chippewa polos and saying, brah, nice mohawk, brah. I don't think we're going to get that. I hope instead it's a Saturday that is just take care of business, play clean football, stay healthy, and start 3-0. All right, the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walker's online. And not online. You don't need to go online. Go to the restaurant. It's in downtown Champaign. Steak, seafood, and spirits. And here's what I typically get there. Bone-in steak, family-style slides, including, let's see here. We have steak fries is what I usually get, along with either green beans if I'm feeling healthy, or mac and cheese if Kara and I are feeling we want some more comfort food kind of stuff. I wash it down with the best old-fashioned in Champaign-Urbana, if not the best old-fashioned in the state of Illinois. Truly one of the, and I'm a bit of an old-fashioned connoisseur. I'm making that my drink kind of thing that I know a little bit about. Hamilton Walkers, though, the service is what really separates them from others, and their scratch kitchen where everything is made fresh. Lon and I are going to be there Thursday, October 3rd for a book release event. I'll get some more details out in the next couple weeks about that, but would love to have you join us at Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call, 217-841-4728, and it's getting to be that time, hard to believe, where you want to schedule your furnace checkup. Yes, it's warm now. But before you know it, those cold mornings are going to turn into cold days and cold evenings. You want your furnace operating at maximum efficiency, and Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing can make sure that it is. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend at 217-841-4728. Also, Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. Home additions, patios, decks. They got a whole gallery of the work that they do online at owenbuildersllc.com, and what I think separates them from other contractors, they are fantastic about communicating with their client. And that's not always the case when you're working with a contractor. owenbuildersllc.com. Finally, State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. For life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Okay. Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Can't forget them. Appreciate them as always. Appreciate you in the YouTube feed on this Tuesday evening. All right. There is a website, Kelley Ford Rankings, and what he does, or ratings, not rankings, and it is a metric website that is predictive of how well teams will do throughout the season. Now, I did not check this last week to see where he thought Illinois would finish, but I would imagine, kind of like Vegas, it was somewhere between 5-6 wins. Outside shot at 7, maybe. But what a difference a week makes. So in the Kelley Ford rankings, which measures offense, defense, special teams, and then predicts the wins based on that, in your 18-team Big Ten, they have Illinois firmly in 11th. And that is moving 2 spots up from 13th the week before. Here are some teams that took a jump this week. Indiana, massive jump. The metrics say they are the 7th best team in the Big Ten. Now, is that the case? I don't know. We'll see how the season plays out. I think they play at UCLA this weekend. And then USC at 4th, jumping Michigan, which actually makes sense because Michigan's offense looks bad. Then you go down. Maryland drops 7 spots after losing to Michigan State. Michigan State moved from 18th to 16th. Right there at the bottom, 17th is UCLA, and at the very bottom, 18, Northwestern. But Illinois, smack dab in the middle, pretty much. 11th. And here's the thing. 11th in the Big Ten of 18 teams with a 3-0 non-conference record, that's going to be good enough. You're talking at that point a 7-win season. And when it comes to conference wins, K Ford Ratings gives Illinois a 53% chance of getting 4 conference wins. 26% chance of getting 5. They have Illinois at 80% chance of getting 3 conference wins, which would be all they would need to make a bowl game if they beat Central Michigan. So that's the good news, right? Now, if we are to go through projected wins total, they have Illinois with a 77% chance of getting 6 wins. So that's the Big Ten games plus Central Michigan. They have Illinois at a 50% shot of getting 7 wins. And they have a 24% chance of 8. So not outside the realm of possibility. That's somewhat encouraging. I'm going to go here to Illinois' actual team page where they look at the schedule ahead to give you kind of chances of each game. So Nebraska is ahead of you 3 spots. I'll just go down the list, though. Central Michigan, they have, first off, Illinois, they have 51st overall in the country. And if Illinois is around 50 in the country, that is about a 6-7 win season. Defensively, they are at 24th, which is a bit of a surprise. And certainly not what I would have expected going into the season. Offensively, they have 79th, and that's also a surprise, but not in a good way, and hopefully they can rectify that. Special teams at 34, I'm sure that David Awano helped a little bit with that, with his kicking. I don't think Mac Radicic helped with that too much. The punting could have been worse. It was fine against Kansas. So overall, 51st in the country. Coming in is Central Michigan at 111. They do have Illinois with a chance of beating, let's see, what do they have here? 89% chance of beating Central Michigan. Now, it is true that the next 2 games after that, slim pickings, but they do have a 34% chance of Illinois winning at Nebraska, 11% at Penn State. Nebraska's 25th according to the Kelley Ford ratings, and Penn State is 7. But then things open up a little bit, minus at Oregon because that's still a long shot. But Purdue, 56th in the country based on the performance so far. Illinois has a 55% shot of winning that game according to Kelley Ford ratings. Michigan, they have a 25% chance, and we'll see if that doesn't increase as Michigan's quarterback struggles likely continue. At Oregon, 14% chance. Minnesota at home, 51. And then the season ends like this. Michigan State at home, 65% chance. At Rutgers, 42% chance. And versus Northwestern, 66. So again, to recap, Illinois, to make 6 wins, they have a 77% chance. 7 wins, 50-50 shot. And 8 wins, 24%. There's a chance. Now, what I'm encouraged by, and I even talked to the 2 football players about this today, and I wasn't trying to diss them or anything. I said, guys, it was just an awesome effort. And I was like, you know what's encouraging is that it didn't feel like that was your A game. And actually, now that I think about it, that is what led one of them to tell me that, oh, well, yeah, that's why when we got in Sunday, Coach B, you wouldn't have known that it was a win the night before. So I think that the performance against Kansas, gritty as it was, tough as it was, just as jubilant as it felt afterwards, we all recognize there were issues on the field. I talked with these 2 football players. They mentioned the defensive line got a lot better as the game went along. They mentioned, well, we did talk about Zachary Franklin and how freaking good he is. Like, whoa, that is truly an alpha receiver. Along with Pat Bryant, you got a 1A, 1B, and it might change from game to game. But, yeah, they acknowledge that it can get better. They expect it to get better. I think Bielema expects it to get better. And that if things coalesce, why not change that 25% chance at an 8-win season to 40%? You know, why it would go up if they continue to have success. So when you look at the Central Michigan game, to me, what is the spread? 19.5? Yeah, you should cover. You should cover that spread. You covered against Eastern, which is a very large spread. You covered against Kansas. I think you should cover the 19.5. I think what you will see is an offense that is going to balance very deliberately, very, very intentionally, running with Caden Fagan and going deep on the edge to Zachary or Pat. You can mix and match those things. Ron Turner did a fantastic job a couple seasons with Kirk Kittner and his, cavalcade of wide receiver talent, along with the running game of Rocky Harvey and Antonio Harris. There was really good balance there where defenses knew at any given time they might get stretched out. And the question that I hope defenses have to start asking themselves about this offense, do we continue to go single coverage on the edge and have the safeties creeping up like Kansas did all night long, creeping up into the box? Or are we going to have to play more standard kind of defense, a cover 2, or maybe not a cover 2, but at least 2 safeties deep, which would then open up the run game for a Caden Fagan or Khalil Valentine or whoever's back there? And some teams will choose, what the heck? We'll do what Kansas did. It really seemed to stifle them until Illinois shows that that isn't the case. And this is where I think this week can be a positive start for Barry Lundy to make a change, which is put more of an onus early on in stretching the field. It's okay to get it on tape against Central Michigan. Don't worry about that. Your third game of the season, there's not a lot to really hide off the tape now, I wouldn't think. If anything, get the opposing teams thinking from the jump that they are going to have to defend deep passes against this team and hope that that opens up early running lanes. So to me, in my, I guess, not so astute analysis as a football layman, that seems like a fairly reasonable tweak that they can make offensively. Defensively, can you keep getting turnovers? I mean, are you going to get 4 a game? Probably not. Can you get 2 with the way that the guys in the back 7 are making plays? Yes. But the question remains, what is the run defense or the defensive line more specifically against the run going to look like? And I thought they were okay in the fourth quarter when it mattered the most. If Kansas had not passed on a 2nd and 2 and 3rd and 2, maybe I'm not saying that, but there were at least a handful of plays in the fourth quarter that showed signs of life from the defensive line in pursuit, keeping Devin Neal from gashing them, getting a damn near stop on a 4th and 1 that felt like they had it, but the spot wasn't quite there. I saw signs of life from them. And signs of life from the offensive line late, though it seems like the interior is a bit in flux. And whether it's Zy Chrysler or Brennan Henderson, is it Brennan or Brandon Henderson? But regardless, he got some tick on Saturday. So it's a game going into it on Saturday where just look good. Look like the team that is the 19.5-point favorite. If you win 31-10, there you go. You covered. You did what you had to do. You move on, stay healthy, and then we can go out and have a nice afternoon tailgate. And what I would love to think, similar to, there haven't been many of these moments where you get to go out to the tailgate with both a sense of joy from the win, but also a sense of relief, feeling like we are macro in a good spot. And if they beat Central Michigan, you're looking at the obvious 3-0 start, which is huge for bowl chances. But I think what you're seeing, if we were to expand that to a more macro sense, is a feeling of, okay, not every year with Bielema is going to be a will they, won't they make a bowl game. Like maybe this is the start of some consistency towards making bowl games. You might say, Carp, that's premature. We're 2 games in. And that the Kansas game was by no means perfect. And I would agree with you. But the one thing that I did feel differently about the Kansas game while watching it is that even when things weren't going well, it didn't feel like it was going to get out of hand. I thought, oh man, that we might be a play or 2 away when all's said and done, but never really more than that. And maybe I'm alone in that, but it just felt like even the section around us, that was kind of the vibe, and that's why everyone was in their seats until the fourth quarter. Just letting it play out, because it felt like this thing was in a much better position than it was last year. And if that is the case, with as many guys that are coming back next year, I mean, you are not losing. Yeah, Zachary Franklin and Pat Bryant, and don't sleep on that. But there's a lot coming back potentially too, where you think, oh, now we're stacking one on top of the other. And that would be a little bit different than 2022, where you lose an entire NFL secondary and you lose a really good transfer quarterback in Tommy DeVito and an amazing running back in Chase Brown, and me being the one that drink the Kool-Aid every so often, which I'm guilty of as anybody, thinking, oh, well, these replacements, they might even be better. No. It takes time now with class upon class stacked on top of one another and some shrewd portaling by the staff. Are you maybe in a place now where you can get some consistency year to year? That'd be great if so. All right, as I'm going to get here to the listener mailbag after I take a sip of water. I had a question today at this journalism class about how long it takes to produce an episode. Like, do you edit it? And I said, no. It takes about however long the podcast is plus the 5 minutes to post it. And I said, though it probably isn't that case when I take a drink of water, which is not great podcasting, but I said that I leave the breaths in. I leave the drinks of water. I leave those pauses as I'm collecting my thoughts, whatever it may be. And that I don't mind that when I'm listening to podcasts because I like the immediacy of it. Though I do recognize every so often there's a very pedantic kind of thing that we do that just, it's like, Carp, move on to the next thing. So let's do that. The question that I asked people on Twitter today was, and YouTube feed, you can chime in as well, was, did the Kansas win change your expectations for this Illini football program, short term, long term? If so, how did it change those expectations? And we got a decent number of responses here in the listener mailbag. I got about 16 of them ready to go. First, I'm going to check the YouTube feed, and it looks like Chris want to get another one here. I got a message retracted. Oh, there was a longer one earlier. But as Brad P says, this is a big game Saturday. Can't pull in Notre Dame. I'd agree, Brad. In a way, I'm glad the Notre Dame game happened because that is easy fodder for the coaching staff to say, hey, look, guys, Notre Dame, top 10 team, lost at home to Northern. So it's good to just have that sort of reminder that it could happen if you don't come out and play good ball. Here we go. From Ethan. I was just talking with a colleague this morning. He asked me a similar question. I paused and realized I got the release of winning the KU game, and now I'm just kind of existing. With CMU coming up, it's almost a letdown feeling. All I can ask is just keep playing and winning. Ethan, I'm kind of the opposite here. I have talked about before with basketball how the best part of winning in the tournament is afterwards you get a couple days before the next game to bask in the glow. And the best part of advancing from the first weekend to the second weekend, you get a whole week to feel good about it. Well, football season, when you get a big win, you get a whole week to sit in it. And what I'm hoping is that the Central Michigan game is just gather with friends, have a great tailgate, enjoy the game for 3.5 hours, maybe 4, as long as some of these freaking games go, and go out and have a post-game celebration, and not just celebrate a Central Michigan win, which is in and of itself not going to go in the memory bank that deep, but to be able to celebrate, hey, we're 3-0. Mission accomplished. I mean, if you think about things that this team would have to do in order for it to have a very good season, winning your first 3 games at home are towards the top of the list. And they have that goal right in their sights. From Evan, I think we were already feeling this before even the KU game, but I think this validates that as long as Bielema is here, we will at minimum compete and have a chance to win every week. The difference between who wins and loses comes down to micro things rather than macro. If this team just plays sound football, they absolutely can replicate 2022 even with the schedule. Evan, I agree. And you say 8-4, Carp? Whoa, chill out. The caveat there, as Evan says, is clean, sound football. Pretty much all year long. And bear in mind, I'm not saying this team's as good as 2022. Why did they finish 8-4 instead of 10-2? Because they stopped playing sound football. They didn't play sound football at home against Michigan State and Purdue. Those were messes, penalty-ridden. Everything just wasn't right. The defense wasn't dominant, and the offense was out of sorts. That wasn't sound. They shot themselves in the foot, and that's why they ended up 8-4. So what I'm saying is, yeah, if they play sound football for the whole season, they're going to go 8-4, I think. A very easy rule of thumb with football, I know Bielema has alluded to this, just make less mistakes than the other team. Kansas probably has more, at least offensive talent, than Illinois. The pedigree and the results the last couple of years would suggest that is the case. And that defensively, they aren't bad. And they are, by many, expected to be a dark horse to win a Big 12 title, or at least be in the Big 12 championship. So ask yourself, why did they lose? They made more mistakes than Illinois did, some of them which Illinois forced. But did Kansas play sound, clean football? Hell no. And they lost. Be the team that does that, and in a way it feels like Iowa. Now, Iowa is in a weird spot where they're winning 8, 9, sometimes 10 games a year, and yet it's just insufferable football to watch. I don't think you're going to get that with Illinois, but imagine a competent offense, which I think they will get. I'm not going to sound the alarm bells yet about the offense. And a defense that is ahead of schedule. Evan, 8 wins is out there if they play clean, sound football. Consider this. I am removing Michigan from that 3-game pack of not going to happens. And I say with Michigan, I still always felt, even if they had a quarterback, that given the circumstances that weekend, hey, shoot your shot. I'm flipping a coin on that Michigan game. Is just circumstantially how I'm feeling. The games where you really don't feel good are Penn State and Oregon, still, as you should not feel great about those, being on the road against 2 top 10 caliber teams. Yes, Penn State struggled against Bowling Green, but teams have hiccups. I don't anticipate them to have another hiccup against Illinois. But that's 2, right? That means you can stumble a couple more times, whether it be at Nebraska or whether it be at Rutgers. But if this team plays good, clean, sound football, they should beat Purdue at home. They should beat Minnesota at home. They should beat Michigan State at home. That's 3 in addition to the 3 you hopefully have after this weekend. And then you got Northwestern, and maybe that's 7. And you beat one of Nebraska, Michigan, or Rutgers, and that's 8. It's not impossible. And that's why that Kelley Ford ratings had 24% chance. Not huge, but just play sound football, make less mistakes than the opponent. It's right there for you. So thank you for that post, Evan. From Mimi, bowl eligible in October. Well, how would we get there? Let me think. I think bowl eligible on November 2nd is more likely, Mimi, which would be the Michigan State game at home. No, I'm sorry, the Minnesota game at home. I think November 2nd is more likely because under your bowl eligible in October, we're presuming that they probably get 2 more wins in September. So, Mimi, I agree if they split Nebraska-Penn State. I agree that they're bowl eligible in October. But boy, that would be something. Mimi, if they're bowl eligible in October, this is a hell of a season. I mean, already at that point. From K. Andrew, expectations are the same, haven't even changed since last year. Just get me 6. Only change since KU is whether I think the team will meet expectations. Been saying since June. On paper, the players on this roster have 8-win talent. Coaches, just get me 6. K. Andrew, I'd like to split the difference, go 7. 7-5, I'm over the moon. 6-6, we'll take it and try to build on it. You say just get me 6. I don't disagree with that. And then my response would be, but I'd like 7. And then as Mimi says, what about 8? Any of those work. From Dave, I'm still not impressed by the offense, but the defense has played better than I thought. Before the season, I thought the ceiling was 5 wins, but now I think 6 is the floor. The offense will come around. I tend to think that, Dave. Now, if it looks bad against Central, I'm going to be worried going into Nebraska that has some pretty good line play. And I wouldn't feel good about that game. And I'll be honest, I don't feel great about Nebraska anyway. So it's like, let's start 3-0, and we can afford a bump in the road at Nebraska, reset before you go to Penn State. Not conceding defeat, but Friday night, raucous crowd at Nebraska. They've looked good, and I know they haven't played much, and I know that Dion in Colorado was yesterday's flavor of the month. They aren't particularly great, but I do think that the offense will come around, Dave. Will it be that by the time of the Nebraska game? I'm not sure. I hope by the Purdue game you start seeing them click. And if they are clicking during the Purdue game, I think you win that game without too many issues. From Dad Life Dion, I like Brett Bielema in rematch games, and we play better on the road, so there has to be a lot of excitement. Not a bad point, Dion. I mean, a lot of Brett's best performances as coach for his teams have been on the road. So if that holds, then I don't see any reason why they would start playing worse on the road. You're going to get a road win that you don't expect. Now, you can have, it can still end up to be a great year if that road win you don't expect is Rutgers. I mean, really think about this. That would mean Rutgers would be 4 along with Central Michigan if you get that. And then you're looking at 2 home wins between Purdue, Michigan, Minnesota, Michigan State, and that gets you 6. We're really saying here, Dion, you get a road win, and they will. Brett Bielema's teams always grab a couple. I mean, God, I'm trying to think. What's the fewest road wins they've had? His first year, they won at Minnesota, at Penn State. Should have won at Purdue. His second year, they won at Northwestern, at Nebraska, at Wisconsin. Should have won at Michigan. So they played, the only game they didn't play well was at Indiana, but that was still a close loss where you just shot yourself in the foot too many times. Last year, the road games, well, Kansas, that was bad. And then you won at Maryland. You won at Minnesota. You lost at Iowa. And I feel like I'm missing an early oh, well, you got smoked at Purdue. So Purdue and Kansas were bad. But you still won two road games in Maryland and Minnesota that you weren't favored to win. I mean, I was ready in Vegas when I was there last October to put down big money that Illinois was going to lose at Maryland. And I didn't, and I was all the happier for it because that reawoke a dormant fan base. It gave that team a chance. So, yes, Dion, this team will win a road game or two, or best case 3. And then at that point, you can pick and choose the combination of home wins to get where you got to go. This is why the Kansas game is so essential to the possibility of having a good season. It opens up so many more pathways to that 7, or could you believe it, 8. From John. Offensive line is better than last year. John, I'd say the tackles for sure. Interior's got to figure it out. But they're not the mess they were last year, that's for sure. Valentine is a keeper. Yes, he is. 2 high-level wide receivers, 100%, John. D-backs are really good. Pleasantly surprised overall. Kickers are solid. Have to see if the defensive front 7 can improve. Well, John, I like Rosiak, even if he didn't have the best game against Kansas, but they spread it out so much that I don't know if that's conducive to linebacker play the way that Illinois does it. And I do think that if you look at Briggs and Akis in the front, along with Coleman and Alec Bryant on the edge, you got something there. I think that's enough to be all right. If the defensive backs keep playing at this level, even a Caleb Patterson, who Brett Bielema singled out as one of the defensive MVPs Saturday, which I think says a lot. Kid is an athletic freak, didn't have a great game against Eastern, but showed signs and had a better game against Kansas against tougher competition. I think in that case, John, you are looking at a defense that can maintain, because I do think that the front 7 can coalesce. And even if the defensive backs slide back a little bit, they do look to be pretty damn talented back there. So, yeah, I agree, John, overall with the optimistic assessment. From Woodsy Moose, from 5-7 to 6-6. Love the defensive back improvement, but lack of athleticism of our linebackers and absent running game gives me pause on increasing the hype too much. Defensive line and DBs played much better than expected. Woodsy, I think you got 6-6 is what you moved your expectations to, and you mentioned the absent running game. If the running game kicks into high gear, would you kick that up to 7-5? I am anticipating the running game does get back to what we saw from the last 2/3 of last season. And when it does so, that a 7-5 is right there for you. From Chris, thought if we could pull out one win from the Big 5, Kansas, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, and maybe only have one bad loss, 7-5 was possible, but 6-6 is more likely. I think now 8-4 or 7-5 is realistic. Beat Nebraska and 9-3 starts to look possible. And you're right, Chris. Rutgers looms large, 7-5 most likely. I think that's a very reasoned take, Chris, and I would still say, gun to the head, proverbially speaking, 7-5. I'm not going to go 8-4. I got to see a big road win, I think, for that to come into play, because I still think this team will lay a stinker or two. How do you offset that? Well, the Kansas game helps, but a big road win would help as well if you're even broaching the 8-4s. From Banana Champagne, one of my favorite Twitter handles, I think it gives the team a little more wiggle room if an upset were to happen. It gives me more hope that they will be in a bowl game. Let's now make it a good one. Well, Banana Champagne, I mentioned Sunday. Hey, what about the Music City Bowl in Nashville? And that, sure enough, was in Brett McMurphy, I believe, his projections over the weekend. I would love a New Year's Eve trip to Nashville. Book it. Let's tailgate outside the Titan Stadium. Hit up, not Beale Street. What's the main drag? Broadway in Nashville that night. Hit up Dino's Hot Chicken on New Year's Day if they're open. Amazing hot chicken. And that would be a great bowl trip. Go down with friends. Enjoy it. Play an SEC team. Why not? From C-Bands, I think it adds the extra win we need to get to 6-6 or maybe even 7-5. If we can back it up with a winning record out of Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon, and Rutgers, then I would project a bright future of recruiting going forward. These are now Brett's guys, and winning with them is big. From Tyler, the 2022 team was really good. Then it felt like we took a step back last year. This team appears to be much improved from last year. Short term, I still think we'll have to grind it out and play each week to become bowl eligible. From Elohim, I'm hopeful, but saw enough deficiencies that I'm going to stick with a 6-6 prediction. We have some playmakers on offense and defense, but the trenches look weak on both sides. They needed an upset or two to hit 6-6, and they got one early. But after CMU, there isn't a gimme game on the schedule. And I think Elohim, it is fair to caution excitement because you're correct. There's not a gimme game after that. Still a lot of toss-ups. I think the Kansas was about the toughest toss-up on the schedule. I had in toss-up because it was week 2, it was at home. So if you got the toughest toss-up, can't you get all the other ones? Well, it's never that easy, especially with Illinois football. But I think that's a measured take, Elohim, and why 6-6. If I were to say, okay, what's more likely, 8 wins or 6 wins? Because I'm kind of at 7-5 now based on the Kansas win. I would probably say 6 is still more likely because it's football and things happen. If one of your key guys gets hurt, which is always a possibility in football, 6 is more likely than 8. But it's cool to even broach that conversation where I think you would have been in no man's land had you lost to Kansas. Just a couple more here from Money Mitch. Hey, Money Mitch. Long term, I think this is very sustainable. Consistently getting to 7 wins can and should be the standard. With the Mizzou games coming, I think this proves you can schedule one hardish game in the non-conference. Carp, what do you think of the improved game day experience? Oh, okay. Well, we'll follow up there. And Money Mitch, my guy, I love the game day experience. I am very, very impressed with what they've done. The introductions, the sound is louder, the fireworks and the smoke when the team comes out. The uniforms looked freaking great. I mean, night game, bust out the all orange. It's garish. It's bold. Some would even say ugly. I don't care. It looked badass. What else? The air raid siren thing they have going. First game, it was Terrence Shannon. Place went nuts for him, as they should. Dana Howard last week, as you're wearing the slant Illinois helmets. So cool. And let's see. We got Mikey Dudek coming in town this weekend to do that. I like this new tradition. It's new, the air raid siren. At least I don't remember it last year. So they have done such a phenomenal job. By the way, getting into the stadium, despite it being a sold-out crowd, not an issue Saturday. Got in there with, I think, 10 minutes to spare before the game. Didn't wait in line very long. That was smooth. Concessions were smooth. Well done. I mean, think about where this was, the Wyoming game 2 years ago, or even the Nebraska game, Brett Bielema's first time, where you saw issues logistically getting in, getting concessions. No, Whitman and his staff have done a great job of cleaning those things up and then adding to it the visceral game day experience inside the stadium. So good. Grange Grove, I didn't go in because we were tailgating out in Lot 31, but there was an above-ground picture from either one of the News Gazette guys or maybe Jeremy, but it was packed in there. Absolutely packed. So kudos to everybody involved, and if you keep winning, you go 7-5, there's going to be even more people next year. 7-5. I keep telling you, and I've said it, and I'm not alone, 7-8 wins a year, you build a thing that Illinois fans will continue to come out to. They're in the woodwork. I mean, I walk through Lot 31, I'm thinking to myself, how are there this many Illini football fans? After all these years and all these disappointments, they are there, and they will continue to come out of the woodwork if you just win some games. So a little bit of an aside there, but Money Mitch, I'm glad that you asked about the game day experience. From Patrick, being an Illini fan after a game like KU means you feel both the expectation of a loss to CMU and an undefeated season. My outcome prediction for the season is flipped because of this game. I now see 7 wins in a bowl game instead of another season of being just short. I'm with you on that, Patrick. I'm feeling 7-5 at the moment. Subject to change as it is Illinois football, but I think 7-5, not that Central Michigan's going to move the needle one way or the other too much, but I think if they go out and look, there's going to be a vibe, an eye test thing that you get in a game like this that says, oh, okay, we're figuring things out. Even against a lesser opponent, we're figuring things out. We're tightening things up ahead of the Big Ten run. That, to me, would say, even if you lose at Nebraska, or even if you lose Nebraska, Penn State, you still have a path to 7. From Timbo, long-term, super secondary next year, decent O-line next year, stoked on Barna and Kreutz on the defense. I agree, yeah. And low light so far is tight end receiving. I know, the pass down the left, not quite sideline, I guess close. Final drive of the game, wasn't it? That went 7 minutes, and they were looking for Arkin, and it was in his hands. He needs to haul that. It would have been a heck of a catch, but it was right there in 2 hands. And that's where you think, man, Rusk would have been a nice option. But you got 2 stud wide receivers. You got, I think, still a stud running back in Caden Fagan, who had a rough night. And it was only his, 5th start? So 5th, 6th start. I do think there are some similarities here to the Bears and the Illini. Now, I think that Luke Altmaier, experience-wise, is ahead of what Caleb is in the NFL. But you looked at an offense that, man, it's going to pop. We got these weapons and all that, and yet, okay, it's not coalescing just yet. Obviously, the Bears was pretty bad on Sunday, and Illinois is pretty bad for the second and third quarters against Kansas. But the good news with Illinois' offense is they figured something out in the fourth quarter. And it wasn't too late, though it was close, but it was not too late, and it got them the win. I think there's something about the confidence that breeds from the last two drives that Illinois had, the touchdown drive and the 7.5-minute drive that resulted in a field goal, that I think can have a carryover effect, that I think can be somewhat of an unlocking mechanism for a play caller who had in his mind, here's what we're going to do to beat Kansas. We're going to extend our drives. We're going to run. Going to keep them off the field. Got a little too stubborn with it, but to his credit, did adjust. If he had not adjusted, the Boo Birds would be out justifiably for Barry Illini, and I would be beyond concerned. I'd be infuriated. But he did adjust. And if we see a continuation of that early against Central Michigan, I think that bodes very well going forward. All right. Thank you all for the feedback, and thank you for those that are tuning in on this Tuesday evening in the YouTube feed. Appreciate any time we do these live ones that you could be doing plenty of other things, and you're jumping on a weeknight with me. So here's the plan. If Illinois gets the job done on Saturday, we would come back here Sunday morning at some point and do a live reaction podcast to that. I will be with friends tailgating pre- and post-game on Saturday, so won't have time to do a tailgate, but I'm sure that you are going to be busy doing the same as well. If you see us in Lot 31, we'll be in the usual spot with the big 200-level flag. And if you ordered a book from me, I have books. I'm getting those shipped out now. And if you're around, I have some blank ones that I could fill it out and give it to you. So, yeah, stop on by. Say hello before or after the game. And I did get this forecast update from Chambana Weather, from Urbana High School's own Andrew Pritchard, class of 05. And I had asked him, what does this tropical storm and the remnants mean for tailgating and the game? And he said, minimal impact. Maybe a few showers. Maybe. But don't worry too much about it. So, not going to be a washout, it looks like. Monitor the weather, but I don't think it's going to be that big of an effect on the immense amount of fun that we're going to have. So, let's get it done. Let's beat Central Michigan. Let's keep the vibes rolling. Let's act like it's not professional football, but let's act like professionals. Let's take care of business. Just get it done. Get some reps for your 2s and 3s in the fourth quarter. Stay healthy and get ready for a couple of monster road games that, hey, what the hell? Shoot your shot and see what happens. All right, before I get out of here, quick reminder, Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. Lonte and myself will be there on October 3rd for a book release event. We'll talk about the book, chat, BS a little bit. I'll enjoy old-fashioned. You should, too, along with a bone-in steak. That's my go-to. They have a butcher in-house. It's a scratch kitchen. Everything is it's the best food in Champaign-Urbana with the best service to boot in an immaculate location in downtown Champaign. That's Hamilton Walkers. Got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend at 217-841-4728. Get that furnace check scheduled at 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for home additions, patios, decks, and more. Check out a gallery of their work and get a free quote at owenbuildersllc.com. Thanks again for tuning in and listening wherever you get your podcast. And we'll see you Saturday for an extremely early homecoming, but hopefully one that finds the Illini going 3-0. It is the 200 level. All right, thanks, YouTube. Have a good rest of your night. I need to rest this voice. I'm still feeling it from yelling at those damned Kansas kids. And Xavier Scott's pick six. And the pass to Zachary Franklin on the sideline. Yeah, that was a fun night. Let's hope we have some more fun on Saturday. See you, everybody.